My name is Jessica Lackey. I'm a business strategist and business educator.
Jessica, you have a history like probably no one I've interviewed. Because you have gone through McKinsey as an associate, you have a Harvard MBA, and you have been a global director for Nike, among a bunch of other crazy things. But what I'm more curious about is through all of that, what was the moment where you were like, you know what I should do? Go out on my own and start my own business. Take me to that moment.
Well, there were two moments. There was the moment one, which is the, oh my God, corporate isn't for me. What the hell am I going to do with my life moment? And then flash forward 5 years later, which is the, I need to actually get the hell out. So moment one was when I was working at Nike. I was inventory director for North America. And that's one of those jobs where my boss told me I got a big pay raise when I was taking the job, because it's one of those jobs where you know it's two jobs. They know it's two jobs. Everyone knows that the people in this job get kind of eaten alive.
Well, at least they paid you like it was two jobs.
Yes, it turns out when my backfill was hired, because he reported to me before they promoted him, they gave him more money when he got the job than I had when I left the job, which was not awesome. I was at quarter end. It was my manager that worked for me went on paternity leave, and I had to do quarter end by myself. And that was when Nike was going through some big transitions. And it turned out there was like $4.5 million of inventory, at least, maybe more, that was off the books in a returns facility. And so I had to maintain two sets of like month end, quarter end books, which is one is like what we officially owned as Nike, like contractually, and what our liability was off the books. And so I had to remember all those things manually. I about died. I mean, not really, but it was awful. I was on call all the time, and I basically broke down in my boss's office, who was not the most sensitive of human beings. And I said, you need to either get me help or I need to get out. I was like a couple months in. They got me a little help or whatever, but I'm like, okay, like this company, I like working at Nike. They're not going to care about me. I need to go do something different. I need to make my identity not my job. Fast forward 10 years and we'll see how that has changed. But I need to make my identity not my job. So I ended up getting a holistic nutrition certification. I went to school on weekends. I needed something that was not my job to focus on to like get my life back in order. So I did that. Then I said, oh, this is cool. Why don't I become a life coach? And then I ended up getting life coach certification. During that whole time, I moved to Charlotte because I wanted to be near my family when I eventually left my job. I didn't want to be 3,000 miles away. And then in Charlotte, COVID happened. And I was working in supply chain at the time. I was delivering an entire systems build sort of by myself. We had consultants come in, but I was the only one in the company that was in charge of leading this project. And it was during COVID. You know what happened in COVID? Everything was late. Everything. And a bunch of the stuff we ordered from overseas was late. And I kept getting like rammed across the coals for not telling them that like their particular freezers were delayed on boats. And I'm like, and we're going to miss Black Friday. I'm like, do you read the news?
Do you live on Earth?
Do you live here? Like, I don't know, especially when you said only tell me about the stuff that's late, that's super high margin. This is not high margin. It was cheap. It wasn't what you told me to focus on. I did tell you it was late, but you don't remember. Okay, I need to leave now. So that was like the 2 points where one was like, I need to get the hell out of a organization that basically made my identity be my job, and I let it happen to me. And the other one was where I recognized I was a bit of Cassandra and a canary in the coal mine, a Cassandra being like, what is happening here? And everyone in my last company, like all the leadership team has since been fired or transitioned out. So I'm like,
that tends to happen.
Yeah. I was like a millennial woman. I was one of the younger people in leadership. And I was like, I'm going to get fired if I stay here. So I decided to bounce.
So you got your holistic nutritional certifications. So you became a life coach and you were doing this other type of work for a bit?
Oh, no, I thought I was going to be I was like, oh, holistic nutrition, that sounds cool. And then I'm like, I don't know how to market this. I'm not actually very good at this, but I do want to help people. Let's go try to be a life coach. And then when you're trying to side hustle a life coach, when you have like, yeah, but basically the only people I could work with were people at my job because I didn't have time to do anything but networking. I actually tried to run Facebook ads back when I was like working in my corporate gig. They were awful, 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 awful. Because I didn't have a point of view. I didn't have something to say. And so I was like, comes a point where you can't side hustle anymore, because if you're giving 110% to your day job, you don't have a whole lot to build with the side hustle. And if you're trying to do corporate consulting, you need to do that during the day. So then I said, at minimum, I just need to get out and figure out how I'm going to make money with not this job hanging over my head.
And you've been out on your own for a while now, longer than the majority of you. Like, you definitely beat the rush by a wide margin. So how did you acquire your first customers?
Well, I basically made most of my money in my first 2 years by doing subcontract consulting from old networks. So I was still doing operations consulting through those matching platforms. Some of my colleagues from Nike, they built a boutique consulting business. So I consulted with them for some projects for a while. And then all my first clients for business advising under my own book of business came from like personal networks. I had joined a bunch of how to get clients types of communities in Charlotte, and I made connections with them, and they put me in touch with some people to do strategy engagement works with, small. And then I worked my way into basically part-time jobs for the first 2 or 3 years. So I did a strategy engagement with a friend of a friend who I met through once I left. Then they're like, oh, the strategy work was great, but we're not actually moving the ball forward. Can we bring you on for some kind of like ongoing advisory? And then they said, hey, actually, we're going to need to transition our fractional COO. You seem to be really smart and know what you're doing. Would you like to take on more hours and responsibility? That was kind of under the ops umbrella. So I kind of worked my way into part-time jobs essentially for the first 2.5 years.
I've heard that from a few people where they look up and they're like, oh, I have 3 part-time jobs instead of 1 full-time job or something.
Hey, I needed to pay the bills.
Yeah, nothing wrong with it, but it's not the most fun realization in the world.
True. Although when you have your own part-time jobs, especially I was trained, within consulting. And so I got to work on my own hours. One of my part-time S&OP sales and operations planning consulting gigs, it was like, they're like, oh, we need someone full-time. I'm like, I can't do full-time, but I can do 20 hours a week. And because I'm really good at what I do, sounds egotistical, but because I'm good at what I do, I was able to get done what many people get done in 40 hours in 20. And so I got to retain the flexibility to build my own book of business while paying my mortgage.
You're really big on the whole, like, no social media thing, or like the book is leaving the casino. And the idea is, I think, like, slow things down, like the slot machine that is LinkedIn and Instagram and everything else. Like, you don't have to play that game. But how do you grow? Like, how have you been able to grow your business and even your newsletter without relying so heavily on social?
Relationships. So I met you through a program that we both joined, and I stayed connected with you on social media, but I was not commenting for commenting's sake, but I'm like, oh, Nick seems like he has something to say. Let's go make friends with Nick. And the way I found Jay Akunzo was following some other people around the internet who are like, they seem connected to the places I want to be connected to. So let's build relationships with them. And when you, like, as you start to play, like, hang in the industry for longer, I think my problem with most social media is not that it's social media on purpose, but that 2 things are true. One is, most times if you try to write for LinkedIn now and you don't have something to say, it's just contributing to noise. So I'm like, go have something to say. And I actually think the way you get to say it is like in a conversation with a human being. So that's one. And then I think too, like, a lot of people, if your ICP doesn't hang out on LinkedIn, don't be on LinkedIn or don't be on social media. And then third is, I think you build authority by thinking and writing. For me, that doesn't happen in short form. I can't think, if I'm thinking about what I write for the algorithm, it sounds generic and it sounds like a ship 30 for 30 like thing. It just sounds flat. So I think in long form. And my newsletter has grown by having something to say and saying it very consistently for 5 years. But it's also not just like, that's, I think, the challenge is like, you have to have something interesting to say, And you have to have people to say it to. And I have found that social media for me was never a place to discover my voice, nor to really make the breakthrough. It's all happened through private relationships.
Well, you know what game you're playing, right? You realize that you're in the relationship game. And I think being on LinkedIn almost somehow rewires most people to believe that they're in a traffic business and they want to, the illusion of passive income, that you can just make a course and a bunch of people buy it and you ride off into the sunset on your passive income. And you realize that you're in a relationship-based business. So it's actually like the volume is low. I mean, I talk about this, Eric and I talk about this on Household Scale all the time. Like the volume is low on purpose.
Well, my business went from a relationship game to an authority game in the past 2.5 years.
Define the difference for me.
So relationship game now, it was like I was getting one-by-one relationships. I had less than 20 clients on my roster at any given time. My biggest 3, relationships have all brought me in, at least over $100,000 of business, right? But now, because I didn't have to monetize my list so early and I was focused on I actually had 2 sides of my business. I had the delivery side business where it was all through relationships, it was referrals through word of mouth. But then I was still writing content. I was writing a weekly newsletter, and these are not short newsletters. These are not quite Katrina Kirsch, ebooks, mini books, but they're 2,000 word, thought pieces every single Sunday. So they're not short. And those started to get traction. I taught every month for 4 years a free class where it was not just open office hours. So I was teaching frameworks and things like that. And then little by little, people started bringing other people. So what stopped being, so then it wasn't, oh, Jessica knows you. It was Jessica wrote this thing or said this thing or has this asset or had this lead magnet or something like that got where my reputation or thoughts made it to them before I knew them. And so now my business is half leveraged programs and half one-on-one.
So let's talk about the different types of programs and offers you have, because so you've talked about doing a few different things since the beginning. So how long did it take you to land on something that you felt like really worked and you're like, this is it. This is the thing I'm going to do?
Well, I don't have I have I don't. Everyone's have an offer. And I'm I have 3. Technically, I have 3/4.
I have an opinion on that, but I'm going to tell you what I think about that in a minute. But I want to hear the arc here quick.
Well, I have an ecosystem. So I started with one-on-one. I started with super high-end one-on-one in the sense of fractional COO that was really designed for 7-figure organizations. I don't really love that long-term because it's not my business. And what I found is that I got really frustrated, and I'll be interested to see what your progression is, you and Erica's, when in 2 years, when after you've been working with an organization for 2 years, if they don't take your advice and you can't drag them to glory as you do. What happens when you want to push their business at a pace that's not yours or not theirs, right? And so after about 2 years, I was this isn't really for me. I want to run. If I was given free rein on some of these businesses, we'd be cooking with gas. But that wasn't mine. And so I decided to step back from some of that, but also more people are coming to me for one-on-one. So I was doing higher end one-on-one meant for people at 10K and up kind of revenue months. That's who I'm best suited for in a one-on-one capacity because my content isn't for everybody, right? You have to have enough tread on the tires of business to really benefit from kind of my expertise, I really think. But the more I started writing, the more I started explaining concepts that I was seeing in the industry and putting frameworks around what was making sense for me. I started getting a lot more people that are I can't afford your one-on-one. So then I put a cohort together, which is basically it's a 6-month business building program. And when I talk, it's like business boot camp. It really is. It's like the MBA for an expert-led business because it's all the things. It's the marketing, the sales, the choosing your clients, but also the time management, the operations, the financial management, those types of things. And then people were I want to join something that's not the cohort. Or you only launch the cohort twice a year. So I said, okay, well, I thought I was going to go I went kind of the original, put all content in a library together and let people get access to it. But then what I discovered is that a lot of my cohort members, after they did the cohort or my one-on-one, were I don't need the cohort anymore. I'm done. But the rhythms you talk about in your one-on-one, in the cohort, we track our metrics once a month. We tend our systems once a month. We do outreach on a regular basis together. Those are really helpful for people. So I put that in a membership. And what I've now discovered with my book, Leaving the Casino, is that there are people who are like not ready for the cohort yet, but I have material that's really helpful. And so how do I package up basically like college, like instead of like enrolling in a degree granting curriculum, as it were, you take a class, you audit something. And so that way people who don't have the time or the desire to, or the need to like take the full 6-month business building cohort, they can take individual modules. My one-on-one clients take my courses when they're like live. My cohort members kind of take the courses when they're live. It's an interesting entry point. So for me, I don't have like one thing. I have kind of like a lot of frameworks, and I say there's different access points to those and that people can move up. And it's not an ascension framework, but it is a, what do you need when you need it, unbundling and rebundling of core concepts that are similarly used. Because there's some things that are like, this is essential way for how I think, and that applies to every business. And this is something that only applies to businesses at 10K months or at some level of, but like, how do I, everyone, and no offense to, everyone's models, but like everyone has gone up to the 10K month person, like, because it's the only way to make high-end one-on-one work. Like that's the only way to like make it really work. And so the entry-level markets, I don't want to say entry-level market, but like the mid-level market is kind of abandoned. And that's where people get fed terrible advice on how to grow. And when people get stuck. And so I'm like, it requires a really different kind of like stamina to like stick at that market price. And I haven't really found a lot of people that do that. Everyone's like, go up market. And I'm like, well, cool. If everyone goes up market, who serves this population of people? So that's kind of where I've landed, is sort of not the beginners, because if you're a beginner, I want you to like be in my orbit, but also like don't pay me a lot of money, because you shouldn't pay anyone a lot of money but there's these stair steps and these fundamental business building concepts that are not being taught and they're not being guided. And so people are lost in the casino, and it's a certain temperament of someone who's going to say, yes, I recognize the kind of marketing I have to do and how to structure the business in a way that doesn't burn me out. I don't know if I've landed on there yet, but I'm like, damn as hell going to try.
Well, I think your platform is organized in a done for you, done with you, done by you model. And so it's probably a lot of the same frameworks and same concepts. And we talk about this a lot. It's like the probability of success. Like, will someone be as successful just taking the course as they would be if they hired you? Maybe not, probably not. That's like why one-on-one exists. So I think there's probably a tighter offer here than you're giving yourself credit for, because they're all very connected, but they're different entry points. I also agree with you that there are a lot of people trying to move up market, but I think I would disagree that there's not a lot down market, and not even that 10K is down market, all that. But I'm thinking, like, think about it this way, like all of the books and all of the courses and all of the coaches, like there's so much out there. And I think it's a different type of competition. And the thing that I find, and I did this when I first started, like I was working with people sub 10K months, one-on-one private coaching, trying to like cut my teeth, trying to figure out how to do certain things and figure out what model worked really, really well. I mean, I was charging like $500 a month. Like it was like nothing. It was basically free when you think about it now. But the point is like, I think there's a lot of options for people at any level. But the question is like, how do you show up in a way that gets them to go, I understand exactly like this the J concept. This resonates with me. The way Jessica approaches business, all of that, like I agree. I believe that too. Because there's so many things. I mean, you mentioned Ship 30 for 30 earlier. I think they've gotten such a bad rap over the years because so many people have taken that program that it's basically just like you can tell. Yeah. I took that program in the early days and it really made a difference for me. But now that so much time has passed, like all of those tips and tactics and all the stuff that they teach, like you can't, it's so everyone has that stuff. So you have to try, so you have to do something a little bit different. I still think if you've never written anything on the internet before, it's probably a great place to start. But I see the point. So all that to say is that I think there's always going to be a lot of downward market pressure. Everybody faces that because there are going to be a lot of people that are too early and they're going to go, do you have this thing? Do you have something here that I can opt into? And we get enough signal that we choose that we have to decide, are we going to act on that? And that's a hard thing to decide because who doesn't want more money?
Well, I think there's a difference in my mind as going down market, versus.
I should say lower ticket. I think lower ticket, something that's down market, not these, like it's just, I think it's this lower ticket is the way I want to talk about it.
I think there's a difference between going quote unquote down market and truly creating like modular entry points. So for me, I think my messaging is still very high standards and it is not broad. It's not tactics heavy. This is like what's required to run a sustainable business. This is my philosophies about that. And I'm chunking down sort of like the intensity of that message. The message remains. So the message of like how I think about marketing is like, okay, I can create your plan for you, or I can take the same frameworks and guide you through it in a modular course. So I'm really thinking about it as less of a same idea, different level of support, and more of like saying, actually, it's just a focused, targeted, bite-sized piece of the whole framework. And it's letting people like avoid the full brunt of Jessica's ideas and pace, right? And being like, all right, I'm going to let you pace this out on your own terms. But that means that it's a different level of support, but it's not, so it's still like, I think it's like the same message and the same concept, sort of like delivered at a different speed, pace, and like intensity, and a different level of personalization. But because I think a lot of the stuff that's kind of like geared towards earlier stage business owners is not the holistic picture. And so I'm really, even in like beginner level, like more entry level stuff, I'm still teaching people how to think about their business. And so I'm never ever giving tactics. I'm like giving foundational frameworks. I'm just chunking it up into more bite-sized pieces for people to metabolize at different speeds.
Yeah, I think there's a lot to be said for having more, what you consider the foundations, like all wrapped up, because there are a lot of people teaching point solutions or they like, this is content, this is sales, this is whatever, this is operations. Like, but there's very few people teaching the fundamentals of this stuff, like all together. Like even like we have a client that was telling us that she's like, yeah, when I got started, she's like, I didn't know that I was supposed to like put a buffer on my calendar link. And so someone booked a call with me like 15 minutes from now, like the time that they booked it for like 15 minutes in. And she's like, these are like some of the basic foundational things that like, she's like, I never thought of that. But there's like, no one teaches that. And she's like, there's no one helping you think about how do you organize your time and how do you set up some of these systems and structures. But there are people, it's like, here's how you write a bajillion LinkedIn posts using AI so that you can get 1 million likes. And
yeah, and those are some of the skills that are not sexy, right?
No, they're the least sexy marketing things to market.
They're the least sexy, but they're durable. And so that's where I've gone from, again, relationships to say, okay, I am now with the book and some of these authority pieces, people sign up for my cohort waitlist who I've never met and I don't know how they know me. And my first cohort was like 5 people that I all knew. And my second cohort was 10 people that I all knew. And now I look at the list of people on my waitlist and I'm like, I don't know any of these people. That's the flywheel, but that's because I've done this same cohort 6 times and it'll be my 7th go around. The frameworks are getting better. And I have given people a lot of different entry points to my work. So it's like, I really believe that part of the challenge of getting people to those higher end offers is or like being ready. Like the material you and Erica talk about for the solos at 20K is not how you like kind of like what got you there won't get you there type of thing. But there's also very little about what's in the middle between getting your first client and getting to sustainable revenue. There's so many choices at that stage, and very few, if any, programs teach sense making. And that's actually really like, I'm teaching foundations and sense making. I'm teaching how do you be like, what business are you running? Where are your people? And given those two things, how must you spend your time, or how likely should you spend your time? And how might you organize your efforts to make compounding? Sense making is not a skill that is lucrative. It's a very hard skill to market, but that's when people market it for me. I'm like, I'm going to teach you how to like understand the frameworks of how to think, and then help you think about how to apply them. And people are like, oh, you're not telling me what to do. I'm building the agency to do it on my own, but you're giving me frameworks to think about it. And again, super unsexy, super hard to sell on the face of it. Very easy to create long-standing advocates. So now, after having hundreds of people run through my programs and stuff like that, and showing up on an incredibly radically consistent basis, what I talk about in the book, what is echoed in the podcast, it's echoed in my classes, it all compounds. And that's when the flywheel has shifted for me from being a relationship-driven effort for me to more of my ideas are leading before I show up in the room. And that's taken 5 years. And thank God I had the high-end one-on-one services to pay the bills, because I did the math for a article I wrote for someone else's publication. I think I did my first leveraged offer in 2023, and I made $10,000. And in 2024, I made $40,000. And then in 2025, I made $60,000. Now, I didn't actually profit at all those years, because I was spending money on the YouTube editor and the podcast pitching editor and the team to put it all together, and the social media team, because I was running, a full-time services business. But in 2024, I think I crossed six figures and leveraged between book, courses. I had a course last year, like a live cohort, a 6-month cohort, and my membership. I crossed six figures, and I took home most of that finally this year, because I'm no longer spending, a crap ton of money on the book and the new website and branding and copy that I had to do last year. Now I can kind of back off the gas on revenue growth and kind of actually be in the investment stage. But it took me 5 years of growth to do that. And it took like showing up on hundreds of podcasts. And I'm not counting, I'm 50 podcasts and at least 50 guest appearances on other people's platforms, joining so many communities. I have 2,000 people on my list, and I counted over 10% bought something for me last year. I did this for a summit that I was doing the other day, so that's why I know these numbers off the top of my head. But that type of, I don't have big numbers. 2,000 is not a lot, but because of, I think, how I think and how I've structured the way I grew my list, everything I do carries a ton of weight to it.
Yeah, it's way more intentional than just how do we make the list bigger?
Yeah.
I mean, that's the game that most people are playing. How do we just make the number bigger? How do we get more followers? How do we get more people on the list so that we can do marketing to them?
Yeah. Mine is, how do I sell 20 seats of a cohort every 6 months and get 1 or 2 members a month? And that has built a durable business for me. And I don't want to grow my list of people that aren't, and not to say I don't want to grow my list of people that aren't going to buy from me, but list growth isn't the answer. I have a revenue number and a profit number that I want to hit in my business to pay the bills. And once I've hit that, I'm good. Why go harder to build more list, to sell more than what I need? I'm good. I like the sizes of, do I want more people in the membership? Sure. I don't actually want a cohort larger than 25, because that would require a different business, and I don't want that. I would have to have contract coaches, and I don't want to do that. I'm no, I like the size of my business. Why push harder to change it into a business that I don't want?
You had mentioned earlier, this idea of there's so many choices for people to make. And I think there's a pretty myopic view on what options are available to people. And when we talk to people, it's they sold something because conventional business wisdom suggested they sell it in the way that they sold it, or they package it and they deliver it in a certain way. Or more, we have to sell more seats. Why not sell 50 seats? Why 100 seats to this cohort? Because if we can. And there's a series of decisions, and sometimes that means limiting certain things. We always joke with some clients, it's how much room is there? It's there's room for one more. Are you at capacity? It's well, there's room for one more. And I think that idea is there are a series of choices that people just avoid making. Or they just habitually make them. They just go, I don't know, it's just the way we've always done it. Or, hey, there's more people who want in the cohort. Like, why would we turn away money? Like, there's no reason to do that. And what ends up happening, what you, I think, articulated well, is like, well, that's a different business. It requires different things. So for you, like, how far do you want this to go? Because right now it's just you. You don't have any contractors that work for you, correct?
No, not that deliver. I have like someone who works on the back end, kind of putting some things together for like.
But not like on the
launch.
business. Well, so he's like more like an EA or like a marketer. Yeah. But you don't have like a contractor that helps support delivery. No. So how far do you want Deeper Foundations to go? Or is this it? Is this it? Like, you're like, this, we've reached the promised land.
Well, that's where, like, I'm like, okay, if my cohort, this is the kind of the material that was mine. Okay, like, all right, my one-on-one is capped. Okay, like that, I do want to raise the price on that, because the more I do one-on-one and I codify things, not lower end, but more entry points, the like more people, I'm like, you can get a lot of me in this. Well, a lot of what I do is information transfer. And so how do I think about synthesizing that? But still, how do I limit the one-on-one to be like, all right, this is really the better my educational materials get and the better I architect how people move through it, the better people results get with the cohort. So that means less people need the one-on-one. I mean, there's always going to be more people that need the one-on-one, but I can raise prices there a little bit. I'm wildly undercharging where I should be, quote unquote, should be, because I want to, and the math works for me, and people seem to be like, it works. And so like my one-on-one rates are like $12.50 a month. Everyone's like, that's ridiculous for one-on-one. I'm like, it works for me, it works for them. So we're good. My cohort, I'm raising the price from $300 a month to $400 a month. It's gotten better and there's more demand for it. It's still like widely underpriced for the, like Rite of Passage was like $6,000 for like 8 weeks or something like that. Yeah. It's still underpriced, but like that meets the people where they need it to be. But the more I codify my work into books, the more I codify my work into like shorter modular courses or workshops and things like that, the more I can serve more people without having it to be like as much tax on my time. But people look at me like I'm crazy when I say, I have a $30 a month membership, and when you join, you get a 30-minute call with me. And they look at me like what are you talking about? And I'm like, that's the best marketing I can do. Like at $30 a month, you get a free 101. And I basically tell you things about your business. Like I give away the strategy. People love it. People enjoy it. People tell their friends, and it works. And I think there's just a lot of shoulds in like how we think about constructing our businesses. But I do want to say, like, how do I instead of like some of these one-on-one concepts, how do I make them into another book? How do I make them into, and I haven't thought about where I was going to come into all this, but like, how do I turn it into decision-making into a Claude MD skills file? Can I make it into that? Can I do more things asynchronously to be like, you don't need me on the phone doing knowledge transfer. You need me reviewing things offline. I don't know where it goes from here, but I do know that like keeping it at a scale that makes sense for me is a priority. And then I'll just be oversubscribed if that's the case. And like, boy, who doesn't love to be oversubscribed?
Everybody.
Right. Like why, like, I don't want to have to, there's some people who raise their prices like crazy, which I'm for them, but I'm like, I don't want to have to stress about selling on my launches. If I'm slightly underpriced and that means I have more demand and fill my cohort a little more better and just easier, and the math works for my life, why mess with that just for prestige and more money? I mean, like if the money's not working for you and you're not attracting the right clients and it doesn't work for your life, you got to do something different. But on my end, I'm like, I like my clients, the money works. My calendar is actually like not as train wrecks as it was when I was doing a lot of high-end work. I'm good. And now I get to like spend time doing other things that I really enjoy. And I'm like, why mess it up when it's working?
Well, I think that's the thing that most people don't consider, which is, and we pose this question to people all the time, which is like, well, when is enough enough? How do we build the makeup of the business to produce what you want? So like, you said you have about 20, 25 people in the cohort. How many people will you coach one-on-one at any given time?
10 to 15.
And is that like, but that's not hourly, like 15 hourly meetings a week. I don't think.
Oh, no. I have some clients who have been with me for 3 years now. We meet once a month and we're on Boxer, right? Like part of my part of my thinking is like, all right, I'm thinking about like lifetime value. So if I charge too much,
stable,
then people basically spend all the money they saved up with me in the first, like, is my like first 3 months much more valuable than what I'm charging? Of course. But I'd rather say like, how can I fit in your budget now and for the next 2 to 3 years, if that makes sense? And that way I never want anyone to, you know how like after, I don't know if you feel this, but like once I've had a couple coaches where like, I'm like, I can eke out the first 2 to 3 months of their money. And I'm like, this is well worth it. I know. But after that, I'm like, I wish I could talk to them still more in a coaching capacity, but their rates are too expensive. And every time I see that charge, I get a little more resentful and I'm more resentful and more resentful because I don't need them at that price point anymore. But I'd still be willing to give them like money to have that like context in my business. And that might not be what they want. And that's how I'm designed, but I like that. And I'm like, cool, how can I watch my people grow, but at a rate where I look at that and say, yep, I am happy to like pay attention to what's going on in your business and give you smart thinking and think about you and like respond to your needs. And it's at a price that you don't resent paying because it fits into your long-term financial forecast. Like I want to be a line item on people's budgets and just be like, yep, that just repeats it year after year. You know, kind of like bottom, like corporate budgeting. You're like, oh, well, it fit in my budget last year, so I'm going to have it. But that means that I don't charge nearly as much as I probably could for the first 6 months. But then people are like, yeah, that just absorbs into my money. And that's how I spend my time. And so I've had some clients on my roster for 2 to 3 years now. And some clients come on for 6 months and then they go off and do the things, or some clients come on and they drop down to the membership. And again, that works.
Well, there's something to be said for stability, right? Yeah. Like when we talk about this one a lot too, how do you stabilize your client portfolio, right? People come to us often and they're like, it's too lumpy and I'm scared to death. Like some months are great, some months are not. And it sounds like you don't have that problem because like, it's just people ride the wave and it's very easy. It's like very predictable. And there's a lot to be said for the peace of mind as a business owner that comes with that.
So I had chosen stability, which means that I don't change my offers very much. I have to keep do the same things over and over. Also, I have to keep part of my time is, I don't take like extended 4-week. I don't take extended vacations away from the business for like 2 or 3 months. Also, you have to keep demonstrating value, not in a performative sense, but I have a 6-month checkpoint every 6 months with my clients to say like, what are we working on? What's our goal? So it's like, it's not just like ongoing access, which is fine, but it's like, they have to be having a roadmap of how we're going to work together all the time. And so it's not just selling hours, it's selling a long-term customer journey. And so I have to know what that journey is. I have to be continuing to like push my learning edges so that it's kind of like the Wizard of Oz or something. It's like, there has to be more roadmap that I'm walking. There has to be more roadmap that they're walking. And I have to be staying 5 to 10 steps ahead of my clients. I have to be forging the path ahead that they can follow. And so it means thinking about the long-term client journey in years. And not everyone's built for that. Some people are built for, I solve a problem, I get out. I solve a problem and I get out. And I have built myself to be like, I'm going to walk alongside you for this whole journey. Sure, maybe there are bits and pieces of it that are more course-based or more intense, but I'm going to walk beside you. And that is not a temperament everybody has. Like when people are like, want to like change their offers up all the time. And I'm like, no, the part of my value proposition as a provider is the predictability and a little bit of the monotony of what the reassurance that I'm going to be the metronome here every month, every quarter, saying similar things. I'm going to remind you of what you need to do in your business. And that's not many people would drive themselves up the wall if they had to be that predictable.
People tell me they get bored. They're like, oh, I get bored.
They get bored. And I'm like, my boredom is my calling card. Like being repetitive and being able to stick with concepts and rhythms for years is why people pay me.
That's the compound though. That's the compound marketing effect. I tell people this all the time. The second you start getting bored is the second other people are starting to listen. That's how you know. If you start to get bored, it's time to double down. It's not time to change things up. It's like if you're getting bored, it means things are just about to start working. My friend Champanino says, don't quit before it gets good. That's how you know it's about to get good, because you're starting to get bored. Jess, looking back, what's something you would have done differently?
I don't know if it's something that I would have done differently, because I feel like because of some of the choices I made about having part-time jobs, not part-time jobs, but having consulting engagements and things like that, I say I did invest way too much money too early in high-priced programs that I thought would help me speed run, and they didn't. So like there were a couple where I look back and I'm like, sometimes you buy access to a result and sometimes you buy access to a person. I spent a lot of money buying access to people and networks, which were not all bad things. But then sometimes I look back and I'm like, that was $10,000 that moved the business, but did it move the business? So I spent too much money on things that would help me move the business forward, that looking back, I didn't either maximize. I was trying to do too much at a given time. So I spent too much money on things that I didn't need to spend money on, that I wasn't maximizing. Like there I look back and I'm like, I'm like, that was $10,000 I could have clawed back that I didn't need to spend.
Been there. There's like Reddit threads on like Life Coach Snark where people are like, how did I make peace with my like $50,000 investment that was really terrible? I never made terrible. I made two terrible investments. One is I invested in a website way too early with someone who I was from a local network, and it was an awful experience. So that one was a terrible investment. But the rest of them weren't terrible investments. I just didn't need to make so many of them in rapid succession. Well, there's something to be said for like, at some point you have to stop reading about doing the work and thinking about doing the work and trying to like learn about doing the work and just go and do the work. Like that was one of the things. And I've made similar mistakes early on as an entrepreneur myself, which was like trying way too hard to learn my way out of a problem instead of just doing or screwing something up. Like I was too afraid to screw something up. And so I tried to like buy access to these things. And so I totally get that. But part of it is, and like, I like the way you described it earlier, was like, there's like tread on the tires. Like someone who's been worn enough, like entrepreneurship will round your edges in some ways. And I think that's one of the things that you just have to go through in order to realize like, oh, like here's where good money goes. Like this is where bad money goes. And you just sort through it. So I think we all learn from those investments, even if it's not the thing that you were looking to get out of it. You learned something.
The biggest challenge, I think, was, like when you look at see who's getting spotlighted in your space, and you're like, I want to be that person. I want to be that person. How can I be that person? And I think there's just an unenviable factor of time. Like it just takes time. Mm-hmm. People have to know about you. They have to see you. They have to see you stick. And you can speed run money. I don't think you can speed run authority. And that is that distinguishing factor of like, okay, how can I make money versus how can I be known and have a reputation that precedes me before I walk, before I'm in spaces. I think it takes 5 years really to build a reputation. I think it really takes that, maybe not 4 or 5 full years, but it takes 3, I don't think you can build your reputation the first 2 or 3 years. It's really durable. I think it takes you 3, 4, 5 years if you're doing it incredibly strategically, incredibly well, and you have precision in how you talk and think. I think you can do it in 3 to 5 years. You can make a lot of money in the first 3 years, but I don't think you can build compounding authority that quickly. And I don't think there's any level of investments. Like even if you were investing in like the masterminds designed to get you in the room with the right people, you don't have anything to say. And therefore they can't speak your name in places because you haven't built up a body of work yet. And I think that's where, if I could go back and tell Jessica something it would be, you can compress building a body of work. It's still going to take you years.
Yeah. No matter how fast you can hit publish, like it still takes the compound effect where people read it and internalize it and want more of it. You can't speed run that. I think people will mistake it speed running audience building for reputation. And most of the time when these people pop up and they go to these big audiences, I don't know, like in the conversations I have with people are like, fuck that person. That's like, well, this is dumbass. This is stupid bullshit. Like, who cares what this person is doing? Like, good for them. They built this huge audience talking about AI or whatever the hell they're talking about. Nobody actually cares. Like, I don't know a single person who cares about any of the things that these people do who make that speed run. And I think I like the way you described it, which is like, it's not reputation, it's virality. And people confuse the two quite often. And I know plenty of people with huge followings that can't make any money. And I know plenty of people with no following at all that make more money than anybody you've ever known.
A Substack, I think, is like both helping and hurting. It's kind of things there are articles that go viral, right? Like that, depending on when this goes live, there's that Matt Schumer article went live on X and things like that. But I don't know this person. I don't know who he is. Like, it just showed up in my feed, which is great for like thinking long term. But I couldn't tell you anything about who wrote it. I could remember the article. There was an article that went live or viral on Substack like a year ago about like sort of like what happened to all the jobs. And I remember that they had a Jeremy Strong from Severance was like, that was the picture on the header. I could remember the picture. I could remember the article. Couldn't tell you who wrote it.
Could have been anybody.
Could have been anybody, right? And so I think like you might have like a couple of hits and you had people grow your audience, but like, I don't know who you are. I don't know. I know what the topic is and I remember the article. I don't remember the writer. And I think that's the problem with like, oh, I have these articles that go viral, but again, that leads to followers. That doesn't lead to revenue. And I optimized. The one thing I did that was right is I optimized for revenue first. The audience came along. Like I again did the math for the summit that I was part of. My audience went from 100 MailChimp people in 2021 to 200 by September of 2023. And then from September to 2023, maybe that was March 2023. From March 2023 to now, my audience went from 200 to 2,000. And that was pretty linear the whole way because I didn't play the social game yet. I have a lot of buyers. That means I don't actually my reputation is still small though. Like I'm not getting asked to speak at New Media Summit and all these types of things because like I'm not known enough for kind of like how to do something specific. Maybe when people are like, let me tell you how to think about your business. That might be, I get to be on that stage. But I didn't optimize for revenue or audience growth. I optimized for revenue and profit. And like, I'm like, cool. Like, what's the smallest audience I need? Really, it's really what's the smallest audience I need to make the money I need to make, not the other way around.
Erica always makes fun of me. She goes, Nick, you intentionally optimize for low engagement. And it's true. It's just like I would rather have the tightest, densest collection of the people I'm trying to talk to. Like, and that's the big problem. It's like people build these huge audiences and it's just anybody. Like I've gone on enough about how I think parasocial content is probably the last type of content people should be producing. And it's because when you do that, you get people who look like you, not people who you're trying to sell to.
And no one really talks about, I think more people are talking about this, but the nervous system tax of having to be that visible to that many people. When my book came out, it was the first time that really people I didn't know were going to read my thinking, that I really didn't know that would do something with it. And I couldn't change it. And I couldn't come back and be like, no. Like, it doesn't apply to you here. Like, I couldn't make all the caveats that you do on one-on-one. And now my audience is bigger. People read the book and they're posting about the book, which is another weird. People are talking about the book and giving it to their friend. It's super weird because I started with one-on-one. I'm like, let me explain to you the frameworks and let me workshop that with you in person. And it's gone beyond that a little bit. And now there's more people who don't have my frame of reference, that don't necessarily understand the language I use. I have to be more careful about how I explain things or what examples I use to be a little more universal. Who am I spotlighting? Who am I putting on my podcast? Like, when it was intimate, it didn't really matter. It was only a couple hundred people. No one cared. Like, they cared about what I was saying, but no one cared about me. I'm at the verge of like people I don't know kind of caring about me. And it's like, I don't want a really big audience. Like, how can I stay as under the radar as possible while being on the right people's radar? Like, I don't, part of it is like, I got off Reds because I said it was like the day after the election in 2024. And people were just like sending out emails on like the Wednesday morning after the election, and just like nothing had happened. And I'm like, regardless of your feelings of politics, half the country was going to be upset on Wednesday. That might have been the day to pause your marketing emails for a day, because everyone was going to stay up late and everyone was going to be tired and half the country was going to be disappointed at the result. Could you take a day off? Like, really, like, or like acknowledge, like, this is not a normal day? I mean, like, whatever. That was my opinion about it. And I put it on Threads, and everyone's like, 3 days later, it popped up in people's feeds, and people were like, how dare you tell small businesses not to market? And I'm like, I told you to take like the morning off and just like move your stuff a day. I didn't tell you not to market. I said, maybe your people aren't going to read your stuff the morning after the election. But because it can't, like everyone, it's like, I'm like, I don't want to get in fights with people on the internet. Like, that's not really what I'm here for. I want to like give good information to people that care and move on with my day.
Yeah, I'm an advocate of like the show must go on in a lot of senses when events and things that people don't like happen. But I also get like, hey, if you want the most bang for your buck on that email, maybe wait a couple hours. Like, you know, like that's also, I think, a totally reasonable thing. But I hear what you're saying. And the internet is, people just want to get in fights on the internet. You know, one of the things that some people love or hate Alex Hormozy, but one thing he said that I think is very true, and it stuck with me, which was, he's like, you know, I never get hate from people who have achieved more than me, or who are trying really, really hard and who are building things that are bigger than what I'm building. I never get hate from those people. I only get hate from people who are punching up. Never people like punching down at me. And he goes, and this is like an interesting observation. And I thought that was interesting too, because I think the same thing is happening. The same thing happens to all of us, no matter what level. I hate to like this idea of like the status, but there's no other, it's real, and there's no other way to articulate it. But it's like, if you've achieved some level of success in your business and in your life and in your career, people who are achieving more things, whether it's money or better, different titles, or working for certain companies, they don't give a fuck what's going on at other places. No, only people punch up like that. And so it changed the way that I interact with the internet. And I go, if people are out here trying to talk shit on the internet, they're probably not my people.
Yeah, I know that people don't punch up. Sometimes I do feel like, as a person who has something to say and has a philosophy, I don't want to say punch sideways, but I'm watching peers. Like, that's why I like you and Erica so much, because like the way you think about business building, regardless that we serve a different audience, is similarly grounded in real practical advice. So there are people who have businesses who like, I watch them doing and selling people bad advice.
Oh yeah. We talk about it all the time. We're like, this person is going to like harm people's businesses. Like, this is not good advice. Jessica, what's next for you? What are you working on? What are you excited to be working on right now? What's next for you? What do you want to build that you haven't built yet?
There's another book coming. There's probably 2 more books. So really, there's Weed and Casino is like, okay, how do you get out from under the tropes? But then there's what's the guidebook and the navigational strategy when you're out? And how do you plan, step away from like the OKR concept, but how do you think about a more rooted approach to planning, a more long-term game, like a long-term thinker's game? Because there isn't actually like sort of, they're scaling up and there's traction, but there actually isn't a good, thoughtful way to create a plan and execute it for soloists. And then once you are out, how do you discern, based on who you are and your personality, what business you should build? Or what are the types of things? Or like, what are the shadow sides of the strengths you have, right? So there's a couple more books that are really about intentional business design and operations for truly expert-led business owners. And then there's codification of some of the frameworks and things I teach in more course modules. And then there's doing other things, like having dinner parties at my new house, which is, you've heard the dog barking occasionally through the episode because we have a plumber, because we just bought a new house. And there's like life. Like, I spent 5 years pretty heads down in building the business so it would be durable and have a flywheel. And now it's time to not invest less in the business, but building the flywheel and maintaining the flywheel are two different like modes of effort. So I'm excited to explore what's next in my life when I'm not having to work on the business 6 to 7 days a week.
Love that. Well, Jessica, thank you for coming on and sharing your story with me. I appreciate it very much. I know more people feel seen on their own route because of it. So for that, we thank you, Jess. I appreciate you. Jessica, what would be your last meal on earth?
Probably something like a really creamy, like Alfredo dish, because I don't process dairy very well.
You're just like, let's go.
So like there would be like no repercussions around that if it was my last meal on earth.
All right. Most of my entire family, like my wife and my kids, don't do dairy either, and so I don't get to have anything fun. It's just too much work to make 2 dinners at this point. So I feel you. You're the first person to say like some sort of pasta or dairy related dish. Most people go, there's like a classic, like most people are just like, I want the biggest steak the earth can produce. And one person said McDonald's, which I'm stuck with me quite a bit. But other than that, I respect your decision. Real question though, do you do like a family style where there's like multiple different pasta, like some sort of pasta creamy dishes, or are you going like one, just like straight up Jessica?
I think it would be like, there we go.
Good. We got it out of the way early.
Yeah.